welcome into week 7 of Friday Night Drive, and off we go for a wild one that we had tonight and some very odd scores coming in, and we're going to get to all of it here at what we would call a shortened Friday Night Drive, only because we had so much Thursday action to get to yesterday as well. I'm Matt Rodewald. Good to be with you guys here as we go down this journey for the next hour and a half together, and Steve Soucie's going to have some brackets that are going to be thrown all over the place here tonight, I would imagine. Is that the early take, or am I just gambling too soon and assuming that?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, there are some things going on right now that were obviously unexpected, so there are some interesting stories going on. There's some of those games that, like I talked about earlier in the week, middle of the pack, where you maybe weren't kind of sure what was going to happen, coin flips, and they're coming up a little bit differently than maybe I expected in some situations. So obviously that's going to cause some field churn in the long run. And then there were some games between two teams that maybe you're not so much worried about their playoff status, but you thought you had a good handle on who the favored team was going to be there. And some of those results are not falling in line.
No, they're not. And, one of them just crossed a couple minutes ago. Prairie Ridge went down tonight to the Central Rockets. I did not have that coming, but it's not so much the loss, it's how they lost and what the Central Rockets offense did stunningly by beating up on Prairie Ridge. This was a 52-21 final. Seuss, I don't know how to break this down, and I see these kids every day.
Well, I mean, I'll be honest with you. When I initially saw the way that game was going, I went out for a half of a game tonight. And, I'm watching the game. I'm kind of half watching Twitter and trying to figure things out. But that was one of them that early on, I was like, what? I mean, the points seem to be coming in such a fast and furious rate. Maybe, your Central Rockets there, had it in the cards tonight. But that gap, that amount of points scored, no way I would have put that on my bingo card starting the evening. Just wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, and I think it's time to start talking about Jackson Alcorn as a serious, good quarterback comparison. We've seen him put up some decent numbers up and down the last couple of years. The injury-riddled season last year, but the senior this year, he put 279 yards on them, 3 touchdowns, 1 touchdown run in the first half against Prairie Ridge. And that defense tonight, Cary Grove hasn't been able to put up yardage, running at least at that point. Nobody's really done that to Prairie Ridge in a long time. I would have to go back to East St. Louis in the title game 2 years ago was the last time anyone did that to them. And he ended up finishing, I believe, with 450 yards. I don't even know if he finished the game because it was so comfortable in that fourth quarter there. Very impressive for the Central Rockets. And one of the things we love about the show is that this is the first time they're now playoff eligible in 10 years. So it looks like they will be in the playoffs for the first time in 10 years. We're seeing that score that's just popped up on your screen. Dixon and Johnston City here. What's going on way down south?
Yeah, that's actually the first update that I've seen from that game. I hadn't seen anything on Twitter early on, but it looks like the road trip down to Johnston City has not gone well for Dixon right now. And we talked about it before. I mean, credit to them for making this game happen, but maybe we got to reassess Johnston City. I mean, that's a very nice, even though it's on their turf, and made Dixon come to them, beating a high quality 4A team in the fashion that they're doing right there. Very, very impressive for that program.
So right now that's 24-7. We're going to keep an eye on some scores. I went to Geneva tonight just on offhand thinking I could get there and get back here. And I found a game. It was a complete accident because and this is something that you and I could talk about with schools all over the state of Illinois. When you have a rivalry game, what is that next week going to look like after the rivalry game? And this was dangerous for Geneva. They survived. They had to get a 4th down stop late in order to survive against Wheaton North, 28-24 the final. The Vikings now 7-0. But from what I saw from Wheaton North tonight, they played their best game of the year. And I saw Geneva play their worst game of the year. And when you cross those worlds, sometimes you get yourself into a lot of trouble. They just came out flat. They couldn't shake it. They were able to do just enough from a big play standpoint. But Wheaton North fixed their running game. They've been able to run the football a little bit this year. This was their best effort. Hats off to the Falcons coaching staff who had them ready to go this week on the road.
Yeah, when you look at that game, basically when it came right down to the breakdown, I didn't expect that much from it. But you're right. It is one of those situations where you get a team They kind of starting to feel the sense of urgency here, what they need, and maybe that's what Wheaton North did tonight. And, you always have to remember, I mean, still talking about 16, 17, 18-year-old kids here. So, coming down off of the high that Geneva obviously achieved when they beat Batavia, and keeping that focus, that's difficult for anyone. To be fair. So it's understandable that maybe they weren't at the top of
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you're talking about a 13-year winning streak that Batavia had. And the other key factor I want to note here, and just a real subtle thing that the only one you would know is really, this is inside baseball. Teacher conferences are going on this week. Thursday, Friday, these kids weren't in school. They haven't seen their friends hype them up for the last 2 days. It's a very odd week. And so it's like the idea of playing basketball over Christmas break or going into spring break in the NCAA tournament sometimes. Sometimes the juice leaves the building. And yes, the students, they showed up tonight, country night, but it was a quiet building for most of the night. And I think that had a lot to do with it. There weren't the crazy elementary school kids that you see running around. You didn't have nearly as many. And I think with a 5-day weekend, some families just took off from town and decided, all right, well, I think we'll just get out of town, like a mini fall break. And so I would imagine this weekend there are some schools and some fan bases struggling with that tonight. I'd be curious to see who else, and feel free to chime in the chat if you had that scenario too. But yeah, it turns into something that you have to deal with, and I think they had to deal with it face on this week.
Yeah, I can see how that would be a scenario.
Yeah.
I keep peeking over to my side screen over here because I'm watching something you'd probably be surprised that I am watching, but I want to get this out here because I think it's pretty interesting. My focus is on a game between two 0-6 teams right now. And while you would think that is strange.
I know why. I want to hear it, though. Yeah.
You would think that is strange, but I'm currently watching the Joliet Central and Planfield Central contest. Joliet Central currently holds a 31-17 lead in that game. There's 10 minutes and 12 seconds to play. It appears that there's an injury on the field, so they're in a somewhat lengthy delay right now.
Right.
The reason why that this is significant to me is if Joliet Central can finish this game off, it will snap a 40-game losing streak for the Steelmen. They have not won a football game in that program since 2019.
Wow.
So I'm eagerly anticipating them get this back and finished because I would really like to see Joliet Central end that streak. There's a lot of good people that have worked very hard in that program, and they haven't had a lot of things to really root for. So, like I said, just looking for the opportunity for this game to hopefully wrap up in Joliet Central's favor so they can snap that streak.
We have been championing streaks that come to an end. Harvard was one of them to start the year. Fenton was another one to start the year. So we like it when streaks come to an end. I see the score that's crawling by here. Huntley with a lead on Cary Grove. What's going on in the Fox Valley Conference tonight?
Yeah, it has been crazy. And that was a game where Huntley jumped out really big early. Cary Grove came all the way back to knotted at 29. But at one point, I think Huntley was up 3 scores in that game. So something is going, like you said, something's in the air in the Fox Valley this evening because it's definitely kind of squirrely, whatever's going on here. So, that was another one of them I was kind of watching and going, what's going on there? So I remember a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about how we stacked the Fox Valley. I don't know how we do that now. I'm at complete loss.
This is a huge impact for 5A and 6A. That's what people are not realizing.
Yeah.
Is that, it's a closed conference. It doesn't change points. But we had kind of slotted the records for these teams. Yep. And all of a sudden, you're looking at a Central Rockets team that could be 6-3. I did not have 6-3 in the cards. I had 5-4 at the best because I thought, okay, you steal a win, one of the Crystal Lakes, and then you do your damage, and then the Huntleys do their thing, what have you. But I did not have Prairie Ridge Fall in there. I did not have Cary Grove slipping back a little bit. All of a sudden, the conference title just goes up in the air a little bit too when you think about it.
Yeah, it makes
if someone makes the magic happen, at least, yeah. It
makes a lot of games that you weren't really thinking were going to be of that much consequence, all of a sudden have a lot of consequence. So I'm agreeing with that. I understand that comment that just was thrown up on the screen. I get it. They've done it before. Yeah. I get that.
They did last year, did they not?
But it's one of those things where you just kind of get used to the pecking order, and then the early results of this season confirm that pecking order, and then you have a night like tonight where that pecking order is now being put back into question. So it's definitely serving as a little bit of a argumentative state. So that's good. I like it when it's that way. I don't want it to be cut and dried.
No, I don't want it to be predictable, because otherwise this show's no fun. It's fun to kind of do the scenarios. So we've got a lot to get to here. So we want to make sure that we get to the scores. Again, we got the scores crawling on the bottom of the screen. You're at a game, you don't see the score. We ask for one. Put it in the comments, put it in the chat. Join us as we continue our mission here. We have some highlights to show you, and then we're going to have a recap from Wilmington and Coal City. Boy, the Chicago media went down there tonight. It's a big one. It's a big game for that. And the Motorcycle Forest Preserve did not disappoint for some folks. We'll talk about that and get to JT's reaction to it. But first, the highlights from Week 7. Just looking at that Yorkville field, how nice it is. That turf's been there for 2 years. It looks wonderful. Luke Engelbrett and everybody did a nice job. Luke Engelhardt, I should say, did a nice job with putting that together. When you looked at the highlights there, what jumped off the page, I thought Oswego getting kind of a grinder and making sure that they weren't really threatened was something that was something I noted for sure.
Yeah, I caught a little bit of the end of that broadcast, and Oswego kind of broke off a couple of long runs there at the end of the game to kind of open things up. So, it's been kind of an interesting night in the Southwest Parade. We already talked a little bit about Joliet Central, obviously, but another game that I kind of kept my eye on in that conference because I didn't really know what was going to happen. Oswego East beating Bolingbrook tonight, 21-9.
Wow.
I thought maybe Bolingbrook was getting a little bit of momentum going here. Obviously, Oswego East was able to kind of contain that and keep it in place. So, nice win for them. Joliet West bounced back after a loss last week, easily beating Romeoville 50-0. I thought that was a game that might be a little bit closer on paper. So that conference once again. And then Minooka, a nice bounce back for them tonight too as well, beating Planfield North. So kind of another one of those conferences where it was kind of like there was a lot of games in there and they kind of maybe tossed the apple cart around a little bit and moved some things around.
And just staying at the Southwest before we get to JT's recap. First off, Lincoln Way East, they're not going to get to 48 or 49 unless we get a safety out of this because it's 47-14 on Lockport right now with 10 minutes to go. Last check on that one. Also, the Joliet West, just a question for you. Have they figured out some sustainability with that program to make sure that they're at least in the 5-win range to get in postseason contention every year?
I think the energy is pretty good, and I think the situation with what the conference that they're in, it's
a little more fluid than I think we thought.
They've managed to establish a little bit of a gap, other than obviously they lost to Plainfield South, but they've established a little bit of a gap over the other programs in that conference. So it should be somewhat easier for them to sustain. And it looks like they've got some foundation in place where
right.
I don't think this is going to be a 2 or a 3-year flash in the pan for them.
Sure.
So that's a good sign for them.
And for a Joliet Central team, the important thing, obviously the streak is a big thing for them. But for the teams on their schedule, that playoff point they might get matters from here on out. So you have to start looking at those. You might see an 0-6 versus 0-6 this week, or a 1-5 versus an 0-6. Those games matter, especially if there's a non-conference opponent going, boy, if we could get a playoff point we didn't expect somewhere. That's what you should look at too these next couple of weeks as we go, live here these next couple of weeks down the road here. So we had Wilmington and Coal City. Coal City kind of got off the schneid early, and then Wilmington took the lead. JT Petaley was there, and he has the recap for us.
JT Petaley here. We have a final in Wilmington. Wilmington 21, Coal City 14. Exactly the type of game everyone thought it would be. Just grinding it out. Wilmington got the lead and just totally milked the clock the second half. Quick math on the sideline. Forgive me if it's wrong. Base 60. Wilmington had an 18:59 to 5:01 time of possession edge in that second half. Ryan Kettman with 3 rushing touchdowns for Wilmington, who moves to 7-0. Coal City down to 5-2.
So Wilmington, we knew they're a good team. We wondered if Coal City could hang with them. Your thoughts and just what you were able to gather from that game today.
I was able to catch the first half tonight, and it was, like JT said, kind of exactly the kind of football game that we expected. Coal City breaking a long run early in the first quarter to account for an early touchdown. Wilmington just kind of went back into Wilmington does. You can't call it 3 yards in a cloud of dust. It's more like 8 yards in a cloud of dust. But it's that
effective, yeah.
They just kind of grind at you, and wait for you to make that one mistake. And they will wait forever if they have to get you to do that. So they put together a long drive in the second quarter, eventually tied the score. And then after the break, they put together another long drive in the third quarter. I didn't see that one, but it was an understanding is that you've seen one, you've seen pretty much all of them. It's the same thing. So, broke that down, ended up getting, at one point they were up 2 scores. Coal City scored with about 7 minutes left in the game to close it down to 1 touchdown. And then, of course, Wilmington took the ball and didn't let Coal City have it back. So, the blueprint was followed probably by both teams here, to be honest with you. It was a game where you have a situation where maybe a turnover or something changes the momentum, but both teams played clean football and did what they expected to do. Wilmington just a little bit better at what they do.
Let's look at some of the scores, and then we'll get to Kevin's recap of Princeton and Mendota. Go back to Duquesne for a minute because Geneva survived Wheaton North. Batavia crushed St. Charles East on the road, so they're an angry football team. A bad time for the Saints to get the Bulldogs this week. Can
I stop you for a second, Matt?
Please, yeah.
I just saw something on the crawl there. I'm very interested to see how the Cary Grove Huntley game ended. Did you see the final?
I did not.
44-43 Cary Grove.
Oh, good Lord. All right. We're
we got to find out what happened there.
Yeah, wild, to say the least. So that was a good finish for sure. Addison Trail, by the way, 35-12. They're 6-1. Is that right? The Blazers, are they 6-1? The quietest 6-1 team. We haven't even talked about what's going on with AT this year.
Yes, so,
and also your DePaul Prep Rams survived against Carmel tonight in a good one. It sounded like it was back and forth.
Wow, that's a good solid win. I know Carmel has not produced the record that a lot of people kind of expected them to have this season. Still a good football team. I think they're going to ultimately be one of the casualties of the depth of the Chicago Catholic League this year in terms of making the playoffs and doing things, because that loss in their quest really costly towards getting them in. So, but for DePaul, 6 wins. We still got 2 to play. I mean, they're really doing things. That's a very impressive situation for them right now, because I mean, they're an interesting team just because of like where they fall. Because like now you got to start talking about, I mean, they're at 6 wins right now. They're moving off of the fact that they're going to be like a 14, 15 seed or whatever. That's not going to happen anymore. We're moving up. And I mean, and they could conceivably be, it's a possibility. I'm not saying it's going to happen. They're on that 4A, 5A bubble. They could be in the 4A field. They could be a real interesting team in 4A North at a, let's just say for sake of argument, a 7, 8 seed. That's very interesting in 4A.
Yes, and I'm imagining a Dixon Dukes team having to take 88 to try and come all the way in there, and that's not going to be a pleasant bus ride. And by the way, DePaul scoring with 42 seconds left, a 20-yard touchdown pass to do so. Just so a couple of other scores real quick. Dundee Crown over Hampshire, so that's holding a little bit in the Fox Valley, and Jacobs over Crystal Lake Central 27-3. That held. The rest of the conference, up for grabs. You figure it out. All right, Kevin was at Mendota and Princeton. The Tigers, I presume, took care of business tonight. Let's find out.
It's all Princeton here tonight from Mendota. Tigers win 57-14. They led 57-0 with the Trojans scoring twice late. Noah Laporte had 2 touchdown catches for the Tigers. Casey Etheridge had 3 touchdown runs. Ace Christensen had 2 touchdown runs. And Gibson had a long kickoff return for touchdowns. The Tigers improved to 6-1 heading into Week 8 game against Aledo Mercer County in a crossover game at Planfield next week.
And I would say with Princeton, I feel like for them, they've it's kind of one of the quieter teams they've had in the last couple of years. You don't hear about D1 players, anyone going to Iowa or anything like that. They're just kind of taking care of business. Monmouth felt like a wake-up call for them, just the way they've reacted the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, it really does kind of seem like that in the situation, because after that Monmouth loss, you're like, well, I mean, maybe it's a down group. But it has been definitely been an interesting year in the Three Rivers Conference. There have been some teams that have kind of jumped up for a week or two and bit at someone's heels that maybe you weren't kind of expecting. I mean, Sterling Newman ended up beating Riverdale tonight, but Riverdale was a team that had kind of rose up over the last couple of weeks and picked off some wins over some teams that you wouldn't expect them to have. So it seems like almost every week there's somebody in that league that's kind of rising up to a challenge. But after, like you said, after that Monmouth loss, it appears like Princeton is like, nope, we're not going to let this happen anymore, boys. Let's keep going. So, they have regrouped quite nicely since that loss.
Trying to keep an eye on games. I do know that Mount Carmel with a 35-14 lead on Joliet Catholic. There are about 3 minutes left in that one, so that's about done as Mount Carmel is doing Mount Carmel things again. Neat to have that matchup. When was the last time they played each other? It's been a long time, I believe.
2007 is the correct answer on that.
So yeah. I was correct in that, and being the long time since they played. We wondered if Freeport could be a team that could get to, the 5-win mark. Not tonight. Rockford Guilford, 29-0 right now. The last check as they headed the fourth quarter on that one. That's the score I have. We'll check the confirmation on that just to be sure. Wondered about Lena Winslow, 35-18 over Eastland Pearl City. That's a nice win for Lena Winslow, sort of going through the tough part of the Northwest Upstate Illini as we kind of bounce around the state here. They had Dupec last week. They had Eastland Pearl City this week. EPC, a bigger school, and Lena Winslow took care of business.
Well, that's a better Eastland Pearl City team than a lot of people realize. So, yes. I mean, that score being relatively close really isn't all that surprising to me. They've had a very good year to this point. So, like you said, a bigger school there, but in that situation, Lena's still the king. But I felt like in this game we were going to see Eastland Pearl City show up pretty well, and I think that they did.
Got some shutouts, and then we're going to check in what happened with Oswego's big win over Yorkville tonight on the road. Some shutouts include Byron. How many points do you think the Byron Tigers put up tonight? You want to put a number on that?
Let's go 62.
64 is your answer. Very good. 64-0 on Winnebago. Crete Monee over Rich Township. How many points did Crete Monee put up tonight?
58.
52. You're pretty close. That's not bad. And then Waterloo over Civic Memorial in a shutout fashion. How many points did Waterloo put up tonight?
64.
Not that much. 41. So 41-0 on the road at Civic Memorial. We'll continue to play the shutout game as we keep going here. Josh was at Yorkville tonight to listen in on or to take in Oswego and Yorkville. You know that Oswego's defense is pretty good. Would they get another shutout themselves? Here's the recap.
It's Joshua Welge from Friday Night Drive here at Yorkville High School, where the final score, Oswego 27, Yorkville 7. Big play of the game actually came early in the game. Yorkville driving in a scoreless game, tip pass, and Oswego's Donovan Williams returned it 88 yards for an interception return for a touchdown for the game's first score. And actually, the game was 10-0 going to the fourth quarter. A lot of scoring in the fourth quarter. But again, Oswego, their defense shut them out into the fourth quarter. Oswego got touchdown runs in the fourth quarter from Carson Cooney and from Teddy Manicus. Oswego also had 2 field goals from Caleb Steppenhorst from 43 and 36 yards. Yorkville's lone score came on a 49-yard touchdown pass from Jack Beetham to Dylan Malone. Final score, Oswego 27, Yorkville 7. Oswego now 7-0. They will be hosting Minooka, who is at last look leading tonight. Could be a 7-0 or 7-0 against 6-1 game next week at Oswego.
Some sting was taken off that game, though, because of what Yorkville did in Minooka last week. But still, good game. Another good test coming up for Oswego as they continue to roll through the conference.
Yeah, and Oswego has just kind of done a really nice job of kind of establishing themselves and just kind of wearing people out. I mean, you get a couple scores early, and against that defense, that's almost a death sentence. And then, for the rest of the way, just kind of chipping away, and eventually just kind of breaking away and stretching that thing out. So there's an interesting final that just popped up on the board. We must have got a bad report early there.
I think we had it the other way, yeah.
I trust I trust that person who's reporting that. I know he was at the game because I was talking to him about it beforehand. So I'm sure he was in attendance in the game. That's the right score. Dixon a 40-14 win. So we take
kind
back
of what
everything
you thought it would be, right?
Yep.
Kind of
yeah.
What you thought
to be honest with you, yes.
And nothing against Johnson City. It's just, when you send a 4A school to play down a 2A school in that fashion, and honestly, I think sometimes Southern Illinois, we just don't know what's down there. And it's not anyone's fault or, unfair to them. It's just one of those things where it's just a lack of familiarity. And so, Johnson City is going to be a good team. They're going to get a couple of wins in the postseason, I believe, but this is a good test for them. Both of them have undefeated teams next week. So this was great for both schools. Hats off to both schools for putting this together. I hope they figure out how to do a return game down the road, at least, just as a favor. That would be wonderful to see Johnson City to come up to Dixon, at least if it happens in a couple of years, and some of the younger kids could see that too. That'd be really cool. So kudos to both the administrations, the athletic directors, and the head coaches for making sure they got that done.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talk about it all the time. These games that, especially with these teams that have been playing so well during the regular season and don't really have to worry about their playoff status. Sure, the loss might ultimately end up hurting their seed a little bit, but that's okay in the long run too. I mean, when it really comes down to it. So, and somebody's going to get a win out of that. Somebody's going to get some additional playoff points. Because if you started to think about this in the grand scheme of things, both teams are getting more playoff points out of this than
they are.
It's
going to help. That
really helps Dixon, because if their original opponent would have played, they probably would have had 0 or 1 points to offer.
Right.
And now they're going to get at the end of the season, they're going to get 7 or 8 from Johnston City. So their seed will improve because of this. And even though Johnston City took a loss here that they probably wouldn't have taken otherwise, instead of being at the bottom of the 2 or 3 loss group or wherever they end up, they're going to be at the top because of the points that they picked up here. They're going to catapult over everybody else that's just like them at 7-2 or 8-1 or wherever they're at. The points that they picked up here are going to help them move way up in that group. So ultimately, the loss is probably not going to end up costing them that much in the grand scheme of things.
It's November football in your house. That's what it is. I mean, to be honest with you, it's postseason football, that you didn't expect, the team you don't know, the whole thing, in terms of the lack of familiarity, which is what makes the Illinois playoffs so great, is because you're going to where are we playing? Where is this town? And so the fact that they did this is huge. And the fact that Dixon, understands that we need to gather playoff points, because we talked about the DePaul Prep a couple minutes ago. If they slip back to 4, well, how they get seeds, well, that matters with points. DePaul Prep's going to have their points, their seeds. Dixon now has the ability to come up a little bit and maybe match them. And if not, DePaul Prep slips a little bit, maybe Dixon beats Byron next week. I don't know. All of a sudden things get thrown around, and it determines who gets a home game out of this as opposed to going into the city. So that's something interesting to keep in mind. We do need to take a break, but Soucie, I got to ask you, the Dixon final just happened, so it's 10 o'clock. So I'm thinking bus ride now. Will they stay with you the whole time on the air, or will you stay on the air until they get back to Dixon? You're going to try and do that tonight? That's 5.5 hours.
I think with the fewer games that we have because of the big Thursday schedule, I won't have the need to be on air as long as that would take them to get home. If I have, then something's gone terribly wrong in the score collection tonight, because, I just don't think. I mean, I think I could take 2 minutes on each game and still not be able to take up the amount of time
stretch
that
it out
to get the bus home safely.
I got my sheet of integrity, so I'm keeping track of my games tonight. I printed off the big list tonight, and it's so big. It's on a legal sheet. It's one of those 8.5 by 14s. Not one of these where I have there's all our reporters here, by the way. So I have to keep track of everything. I don't have this all memorized. We're just flying by the seat of our pants. We have scores coming in. We have some big upsets to note here and some notable finishes too. So we will get back to that. Take a time out as we continue here on week 7, Friday night drive here on Shaw Local.
We're here to help you with your problems that result from an automobile accident or an injury on the job or the loss of a loved one. There's no reason you should go through this alone and guess that you're doing things right.
We deal with tragedies that affect families and individuals every day.
Come here and protect your interest. We've been doing this collectively for over 100 years. Let's put that experience to work for you.
Hey football fans, listen up. I'm top there, and I drive a Hawk. I got it from my friends at Hawk Volkswagen. So drive what I drive. Drive a Hawk. Hawk Volkswagen on Jefferson Street in Joliet or online at hawkvw.com.
I like Reich.
I like Reich.
Since 2016, it's been my privilege to represent the people of the 63rd District. I want to continue representing you as an independent voice in Springfield.
I like Reich. We like Reich.
Do you ever wonder where the profits go when you shop at a big box store? Hi, this is Patty from Oliver's Corner Market. When you shop at Oliver's, you can rest assured that the profits stay local, supporting other local businesses and charities. Find us at the corner of Britton and Bradshaw in Dixon.
All right, welcome back. Second half hour of the show. Matt Rodewald, Steve Soucie with you. It is week 7 of Friday Night Drive here on Shaw Local. I'm watching stuff. You're watching stuff. What jumps out at you right now as we're watching the scores? Anything? By the way, Princeville, not ranked statewide. They won again. They're 7-0 now. Time to put them in the top 10. What do you think that's jumping out to you across the state right now?
Who did they play tonight? Did they play Stark County?
Stark County, yeah.
Okay, that's a really good win. I thought that's who they played. So, yeah, that is a nice win. I would argue that, you're absolutely right. They just belong in the top 10. Well, during the break, I was able to gather a little bit of information on the Cary Grove-Huntley contest and how it finished.
Yes.
Huntley took a lead with 3:45 left with a touchdown to take a 43-36 lead. Cary Grove marches down the field, scores with 1:22 left. Goes for 2 and gets it. So that is how that game finished. And I know
with
that
how much time left?
They scored with 1:22 left in the game.
Wow.
So that was that was the decisive touchdown. Went for the 2 in the win, got it, and that's your final score, 44-43.
Imagine going for it and not getting it, because I believe last year Huntley went to get it on them and their homecoming at Cary Grove. So there you go. Wild. That's pretty wild sequence. That's fascinating how that turned out. So we'll be keeping an eye on how that conference goes the rest of the way. I'm still trying to gather scores. By the way, Lincoln Way East 47 points final score. So now the average is going to slip a little bit by maybe a quarter of a point there. Cesar-Valier downstate 40-14 over. It's El Dorado, right? It's not El Dorado. Okay.
Yes.
See, I heard 2 different things this week. I'm like, no. It's El Dorado. I knew that. Edwardsville gets a win. Belleville East, the winner there. DuQuoin was doing DuQuoin things on Anna Jonesboro. It's 49-8. By the way, they're going to be 6-1. Time to put them in the top 10. Just looking around Southern Illinois, nothing notable at the moment with Althoff Catholic getting a win tonight, 46-6. They're awfully good, and we know that. And so we'll keep an eye on what they do the rest of the way. Bloomington over Peoria Notre Dame 34-7. They got beat last week. They picked back up. Some people started to look at Peoria Notre Dame as a team to pay attention to. Bloomington says we're pretty good still. 34-7 to win. How do you look at that Big 12 right now? Normal Community and everyone else, and Peoria's, that one loss kind of took the bloom off the rose a little bit, but not a lot.
Well, Normal Community apparently has gotten their mojo back. They dropped to 71 tonight. So,
what did they really?
Yeah, they beat Danville 71-12. So, so obviously they've gotten going. Like I said, I saw them a couple of weeks ago against Kankakee. It didn't look like they were quite on their game, but it looks like they've found their groove again. So, and Peoria won comfortably again tonight. I believe they held Champaign Central to 2 points. They only scored 44 themselves. So. Must have been a low scoring time delay type of game, if you would. So, definitely an interesting situation there. But, I think when it really comes down to it, I think maybe Normal Community is kind of reestablished itself as maybe the top team there. I guess we'll see as we go along here. But, the 7A Ironmen are hoping to finish out 8-1 so they can avoid you never know what you're going to get in 7A anymore, because it looks like we're going to have several 2 and 3 lost teams that are pedigreed programs that might end up falling on that 24 line if you're a 9, or falling on that 23 line if you're a 10. So it's almost like throwing darts at that point in time and hoping that you don't hit the right target.
If you have scores, we'd love to see them. Things we're not seeing right now. We want to catch up in the Catholic League on the Duquesne Conference. We're going to check in Geneva in just a second here. Before we come back north here, I want to check in on the Mid-Illini, because Washington put a number on Dunlap tonight, 31-10, the final Washington over Dunlap. That not so much a surprise. We know Washington's good, but that conference is another one where I can't figure it out.
Yeah, something has happened with that Washington team here mid-season moving forward, because they're playing a lot better football now than they were early in the year when I was questioning whether or not they were struggling with the coaching transition and some of those other things. They've just played pretty good football here since like week 3, week 4. They have really kind of amped it up there. So, I think Washington is in a real good place as we head down the stretch run here. I still think Dunlap's a good football team. It's just going to be real interesting to see what class those guys fall in, because they're another one of those bubble teams between 5 and 6A.
To the Catholic League now, as I look at IC Catholic getting a win at Mardian tonight, 40-6. Without looking at the schedule, because I don't know it off the top of my head, is there a path to the postseason for IC Catholic at this point?
Well, I think
they can probably sustain maybe one more loss.
I do know the schedule, actually, and the one that I think is the most intriguing one for them is that they have St. Rita in week 9.
Yeah.
So that's potentially a problem. However, if they do finish 4 and 5, they're not exactly at the top of the list. They're darn close. I'll put it that way. They're very, very. They're projected right now to finish somewhere in the neighborhood of the low 50s, and that should put them in a pretty good spot.
How many 4 and 5s did you have this week without reading your column?
This week was 9.
Okay, that's pretty much on par with where you've been, right?
Yeah, that has been where we've kind of settled in that general area. 7 to 10, something like that.
By the way, Woodstock North shut out tonight. Just saw that, 35-0. Richmond Burke. We'll get to that in a little bit here. But I want to check in on the Duquesne Conference, because the Geneva Vikings, they a little sleepy tonight, and understandably so. You get a big win over Batavia, and all the engines are not firing the way they wanted to. They had to gut this one out, and they survived Wheaton North. Joel Bennis was there tonight. He has the recap.
All right, I'm at Burgess Field in Geneva, where the Vikings just pulled off a 28-24 victory over Wheaton North. Man, what a game. It took all the way to the final drive to determine the winner. Wheaton North made it all the way down to the 13-yard line in Geneva territory, but a delay of game, a sack from Troy Velez and Sean Lee, a spike, and an incompletion from Talon Taylor ended the run back. Taylor also had 6 receptions for 162 yards and a touchdown earlier in the game. And Troy Velez also had 1 rush for 2 yards and a touchdown in the fourth quarter. Michael Romero had 80 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns as well, including the game winner with 4 minutes left for Geneva. On top of that, Wheaton North had a very productive game after 2 straight losses. Nick Shafsma was the leader in that department. He had 15 rushes for 154 yards and a touchdown, which came on a 50-yard drive to put him up 24-21. He also had a receiving touchdown in the second quarter as well. Geneva stays perfect, 7-0 on the season. Wheaton North moves to 3-4.
Yeah, Wheaton North 3-4. They're going to have work to do to get in the postseason. But again, that might be a 4-5 team, and I don't know their schedule either, as they might have gone through the toughest part with Batavia, St. Charles North, and Geneva all done now. But Chefs, that running back, I'm telling you, Soucie, I was very impressed with it, having seen him against St. Charles North, seen him against Geneva. 152 well-earned yards tonight. They ran the football really well. And that was a lot more like what I saw Geneva do against Glenbard North a couple weeks ago for the first half. And so, Wheaton North, when they can run the ball, depending on the matchup they have, if they get to the postseason, they are a problem because you can't get them off the field. Wheaton North punted one time in the second half. Geneva just couldn't get off the field.
Yeah, and when you looked at it, like we were talking about this before, and I still believe that this is ultimately probably going to be what the case was, how big, when you look back over the course of their season, how big Wheaton North's win over Providence will ultimately be to win for this team, because their schedule does temper down over the final remaining 2 weeks of the season. 5-4 looks very possible as long as they stay focused, but it would not be if they had not pulled that Providence win out. So for them, obviously, like I said, just keeping the eye on the prize there, I think 5-4 is very much in the realm of possibilities for them.
That's a 5-4 in 7A, and a matchup that you send them to Quincy. I'm not sure how that turns out. The way I saw the team I saw tonight was a football team that could win in the postseason. So interesting to see how we'll follow the Falcons going forward here. Let's check in also with Piatone and Streeter. Brian Hoxie has Piatone's big win tonight.
Hi, everybody. Brian Hoxie here from Friday Night Drive, Shaw Media. Tonight I was in Piatone. Piatone hosted Streeter in a Illinois Central Lake Conference game. Piatone led 35-7 at halftime and ended up with a 52-14 win over the Bulldogs. The biggest story of the night was Piatone's Chase Rivera set the single game rushing record for Piatone. He rushed 22 times for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. All told, Piatone rushed for over 450 yards and had over 500 total yards. For the Bulldogs, Isaiah Weibel, he was 13 for 26 for 161 yards and 2 touchdowns, both of those touchdowns to Matt Williamson. So again, here in Piatone, Piatone defeats Streeter 52-14.
What do you make of the Illinois Central 8 at this point?
I think it is Wilmington's race. I think the most interesting thing that kind of came out of tonight's action, and I know they eventually came through and ended up, I think, winning the football game, but Mantino was having a lot of trouble with Reed Custer for most of the game this evening. So I don't think they really broke away until, somewhat late in the second half. So that was something that I was kind of monitoring tonight. I took a look at Mantino last night. I kind of liked what I saw, but like what we talked about before, this thing is still Wilmington and Coal City's conference at the top, and then there's a pretty substantial gap between those two and the rest of the league.
Mantino did win 27-19, the final there. Looking at some other scores in that area, kind of by you, Bradley Bourbonnais, 24-21 over Homewood Flossmoor. And then we were watching Marengo and Harvard tonight. That was going on the wire. I believe Harvard got the onside kick after scoring and having a chance, but it looks like that stalled out, and Marengo gets another win. So the Kishwaukee River, let's go back to Richmond Burton's 35-0 win. That's a classic case of a conference champion year in and year out saying, hold on a second. Hold, no, you're not ready yet for this. And Richmond Burton did Richmond Burton things.
Yeah, and we talked about this on Monday, like the possibility of that potentially happening, with Richmond Burton basically saying, hey, you know what? We're not ready to relinquish this thing just yet. So hold on a minute. Let's roll this back a little bit. So, yeah, definitely a dominating performance for them. That's 2 weeks in a row they've put together some really nice things against some pretty decent football teams. They did this last week to Sandwich as well. Kind of took them out of the game really early and ended up with a dominating win. So something was either bothering them early in the season. They couldn't quite get it figured out, but they clearly have now. So as they continue to pile up these wins, they're moving away from when I was thinking, well, they're probably going to end up as like a 13 or a 14 seed. they're climbing that ladder every week. So it's starting to get more and more notable to them, where it looks like now that, even though they've got 2 losses, in the way that 4A North is kind of breaking down, and there's still a little whisper of a chance that team could slide into 3A, but that's a discussion for later on. But in 4A, now they're starting to look like, well, maybe they can get to a 5 or a 6 or something like that. And then all of a sudden, with the way they're playing, if I'm a 3, I'm not looking forward to that second round game.
Yeah.
I don't want anything to do with that team.
I mean, you said it more than I thought. I'm thinking, at the moment, 8-9, and being the 9 would be a nightmare to have that 1 come to you the next week in the second round. But even still, having a home game in round 1 and then just getting that thing rolling for Richmond Burton would be fascinating, no less. Want to switch over to the Interstate 8. Morris got back to work over Ottawa tonight, 59-0 at home. And how about this score with Rochelle just pounding Canelan, 52-24 tonight. Rochelle's a really good football team. It's pretty clear they are a dangerous team.
Well, that ground game can be absolutely dominating when they get it going in the way that they want to get it finished. And it's pretty impressive, that they've been able to churn up these yardage totals against some pretty solid opponents. I mean, against Morris, they were running all over the place. I haven't seen the final stats on this one, but I mean, I'm beating Canelan in that fashion. I'm sure that's the route that they took. And once again, we're going to have this discussion a lot over the next few weeks, but Rochelle's another team kind of on the bubble between 4 and 5. If I'm a 4A team, I don't want anything to do with Rochelle right now. No way.
Nope. And I can already see how that chatter would be if a Dixon-Rochelle quarterfinal would be that. Wherever that game is played would be something to see for sure. As we stay in the Interstate 8, check in with Sycamore and their big win over LaSalle, Peru tonight. Kevin has more tonight.
Hi, I'm Kevin Clem with Friday Night Drive at LP's Howard Fellows Stadium. Tonight, Sycamore beat the Cavaliers 28-13 to move to 7-0 in the season. It was Coach Joe Ryan's 200th career victory. Most of his wins have come at Sycamore, but he's also had stops at Princeton and Eureka in his career. Tonight, Burt Goucher was the main man for the Spartans, throwing for 2 touchdowns and running for 2 more. The Spartan defense was very stingy, holding LP off the scoreboard until the final 3 minutes of the game. LP freshman quarterback Marion Persich threw a touchdown pass to Landon Zellers to get the Cavs on the board, and Reagan Keller added a pick 6 in the final minute to set the final score. Sycamore will play Morris next week with the Interstate 8 Conference title on the line, while LP falls to 3-4, and they'll be at Canelan next week, looking to keep their playoff hopes alive.
For a non-7A, 8A program, I think you can make the argument that Sycamore might be the most underrated football program in the entire state of Illinois.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, it just seems like every year, you look up 7-8 wins, 7-8 weeks into the season.
Yep, there they are.
7-1, 8-0. It seems like almost every single year.
Yeah, and it's impressive to watch. And 200 wins for Joe Ryan. For years, Sycamore would run into the Montini monster in the postseason. That was just a brutal one. And one that I remember I called was when they couldn't keep a drive going, and it gave Montini one miracle play. They got that play then down with 1 second left. They got a field goal off, and they won in the second round. Montini was able to beat Sycamore, and it was just one of those, I think it was the 5th year in a row where it's Sycamore fans, their head down just like this. So they've been a tormented football program too over the years. So impressive to see them continuing to just spank teams left and right. And, I would say this, let's do this. So, let's make a promise to ourselves. We got to do a show from that building down in LaSalle. We should do the show from there one time just to see how this could go. And see if they'll let us leave the lights on. For you, they might have to shut it off at 11 o'clock. You do the rest in your car, but I think you'd be okay with that, right?
I've done weirder things. I'll say that.
Well, that takes a totally different route there for sure.
And by the way, just to stop you real quick there, Joliet Central is celebrating their victory. So the 40-game losing streak is over. 30-17 final for Joliet Central tonight.
Steel men win. Well, I want to ask you a question about that when we come back. And so I want to check in with Eddie. He's got a 2-minute recap tonight. Let's check in with Eddie.
Bonzi Valley tops the Cab 28-19 here in Aurora. Quick recap of the game. Apologies while I look at my notes. The Cab in this to the end. Unfortunately for them, Waubonsee Valley keeps answering their touchdowns with their own touchdowns. DeKalb gets it to within one at 14-13, missed an extra point that would have tied it. But then John Sierkiewski, I'm sorry for butchering your names, hit Owen Roberts, probably got that one right, for 15 yards. That put them back up 8. And then DeKalb answers, gets within 2. But then Christian Stevens with the kind of the backbreaker, a 19-yard run. They had actually kind of limited the DeKalb defense all day. That was his longest run. He did carry it like 20 times, ended up with about 60 yards, 20 of them coming on that run. That was about like I said, the biggest one he had that game. A great effort for the DeKalb line stopping him. He kept trying to go up the middle. They kept stuffing him. They did get him going on the screen a little bit later, but that was and that's kind of what helped their offense a little bit in a 28-19 win. On the Calb's end, a big wrinkle that they added, Devon Grant, the 6'3", 6'4" wide receiver, has been having trouble getting stuff going. They're having trouble getting the ball in his hands. Cole Latimer's been hurt. Mikey Hodges has been playing quarterback to backup. He actually only threw one interception today. It was very late in the game. He actually almost hit 200 yards, had a very big game. The wrinkle being they threw Devon Grant at running back a little bit, split him out with Amarian Dudley at running back. Side by side in the shotgun next to Hodge. That created a lot of stuff for them. And then they did open up them throwing him the ball a little bit. He ended up over 100 receiving yards. So there's your recap, 28-17. Waubonsee Valley beats DeKalb. Also a big win for Waubonsee. That's their 4th. And they do have Matea lurking in the next week or 2. They've struggled this year, so that could be win number 5. This was an absolutely must-have, though, for the Warriors, and they got it. So 28-17 final here.
You know, I got to ask you this because it's address the elephant in the room. What do you think is in Eddie Carifio's beard? You know, what do you think is hiding in there tonight?
Random food.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
I really don't know.
I'm gonna guess there's a butterscotch.
I also wonder what's going on with his glasses. To be completely honest with you, too, he needs some windshield wipers or something.
That's true. I mean, it wasn't raining anywhere tonight, and it was actually nice and warm.
So. I don't know.
Night for football. It's just fogged up. I never know where this look is going to go with Eddie every week. So it's fabulous. And yes, he is kind of. It's kind of, you know what? He was kind of like a Trading Places Santa with the grayish but not really white beard, you know. So kind of like a Dan Aykroyd Santa. That's a very deep pop culture reference in the 80s. If you get that, God bless you. So, all right. So what are you watching right now? I saw Mount Carmel went final, 35-21. Joliet Catholic got a late score to get that within 2 touchdowns. Mount Carmel. I don't know if Elliott played tonight. I'm not sure.
I think he did.
He did. So okay. So at this point, I don't know where to read them at this, but week 9 is still kind of looking at me going, who wins that one and whoever loses that one is going to be a problem for some.
Yeah, it is, and it's one of those situations. I mean, they both have 2 at this point in time, so somebody's got to lose it. So somebody's got to be a 3-loss team heading into the playoffs at minimum. That's if they get through their other games without tacking on another one at some point in time. Loyola as a 3-loss team is probably looking at being like a 20 seed. Mount Carmel, somewhere in the 18 to 22 range as well if they're the 3-loss team. So it gets very complicated in trying to figure out like who might draw that bullet, to be honest with you, in the first round. And it's going to be something that I'm sure we're going to be talking about because like we've talked about before, it's not only a Loyola and Mount Carmel thing. You can look around the state and look at a lot of the power programs that you're used to getting through the regular season at 9-0.
Name brand, yep.
They're not. They're going to finish 7-2. They're going to finish 6-3. In some cases, they're going to be 5-4. So we might have the same teams in the bracket, but they're not going to be in the same places, and that's going to make for a fascinating postseason.
And that's one of those and we don't have the TV coverage the way that we used to, at least in terms of the marquee game to put on. But that would be ideal of like a 7-2 Loyola team going to play against an 8-1 really good team that's up and up here. So just something to keep in mind, as you look at these brackets when they come out here in a couple weeks of like, ooh, that's the game I want to see. And that's the good thing from a competitive standpoint too, because we get a lot of first round blowouts. It is nice to have some really tight ones here, especially when they're not necessarily the seed friendlies that you always see. Go forward here. A couple of scores here, and then I'm going to check in with Morris to figure out exactly what they do, because I want to know what they were able to correct from some of the things that they did last week against Rochelle. Wheaton Orville South got a win over Lake Park tonight, 27-14. So as you watch the bottom of the Duquesne, kind of fight things out, that's kind of where those playoff points kind of come into play as well. Glenbard East took care of West Chicago 49-15. That's a better team in the Upstate 8, having to do what they need to do. So they keep on rolling here. Hinsdale Central, a shutout win over Proviso West. How many points did Hinsdale Central have tonight, Seuss?
53.
64-0, the final in that one. And those are the scores that I have right now as I'm looking through. Rockridge over Mercer County. Got to go all the way back to Rockridge. 34-6, the final score. Williamsville over New Berlin. 39-7 in the final there. So that's Williamsville's kind of been outside of the state rankings here, trying to claw their way back in. So that one is kind of one I had interest in. And Richards over Lamont tonight, 21-10. That just went final a little bit ago as well. Bill Frescus was at Morris to watch Morris take on Ottawa and the final.
All right, folks, we are final for Morris. 59-0, Morris over Ottawa. It was 49-0 to finish the first half, so it was never really a game. Morris just did everything they wanted. Really complimentary offense. They ran the ball well, passed the ball really well. Young quarterback, sophomore R.J. Kennedy, had 4 touchdowns in the first half to 4 different receivers. So they were able to spread the ball around and just got the job done defensively too, obviously, to pitch a shutout. So 59-0 is the final. Ottawa's next 2 opponents will be versus Rochelle and then at St. Bede. Morris will finish their season at Sycamore and then at Byron Center. So Morris looking to the playoffs. Ottawa looking to finish their season strong. Thanks.
You're welcome. Sycamore Morris, obviously you put Sycamore as the favorite there. What does Morris have to do to make sure that's still a game? And that's at Sycamore, which is they're going to smell blood in the water there.
Yeah, it's definitely one where you look at it on paper based on where the teams have been so far this season, and you have to make Sycamore the favorite heading into this game. But you have to remember in the back of your mind that Morris has shown the capability to flip the switch almost at will at times. And if they play at the level that they've shown that they can play, that's going to be a whale of a football game. That I really genuinely believe that. Even though that's a trip up there, Morris isn't going to relinquish that without a fight. They are capable. It's just they've had a couple of hiccups this year. If they play the way that if they play at the high level that they can reach, great game.
Question comes in regarding Cary Grove and Central. Yes, week 1 was the opener between Central and Cary Grove. And that was a 27-3 final. Central did not. Cary Grove was without Logan Adams in that game. Logan Abrams, I should say. And it was kind of a. This is what Cary Grove does. They're kind of dull out of the first 2-3 weeks. They still get wins, but they're not pretty. And then they just keep rolling along. And this is a game like tonight and the wildness of Huntley. That's usually what that flips the switch usually for Cary Grove heading in towards the late stages of October. I'll be very interested to see how Cary Grove reacts the rest of the way here. I would imagine they'll be fine, and I think they're going to win the conference at this point. But it was interesting to kind of see that result and just go, oh, okay. Last year, it kind of turned them on after that. So I think you might see the same thing again.
Yeah, I think that's very possible. There's definitely no doubt about that.
All right, we're going to take a break here. Don't go anywhere. We're going to keep going here because we got games from all over the state. We have to check in with our random Southern Illinois scores, too, as well. And a little more on the Duquesne Conference because we got a Week 9 showdown that might be looming as well. So we take a break. Matt Rodewald, Steve Soucie with you. It is Week 7 here on Friday Night Drive.
Hey, football fans, listen up. I'm top there, and I drive a Hawk. I got it from my friends at Hawk Volkswagen. So drive what I drive. Drive a Hawk. Hawk Volkswagen on Jefferson Street in Joliet or online at hawkvw.com.
Do you ever wonder where the profits go when you shop at a big box store? Hi, this is Patty from Oliver's Corner Market. When you shop at Oliver's, you can rest assured that the profits stay local, supporting other local businesses and charities. Find us at the corner of Britton and Bradshaw in Dixon.
I like Reich.
I like Reich.
Since 2016, it's been my privilege to represent the people of the 63rd District. I want to continue representing you as an independent voice in Springfield.
I like Reich. We like Reich.
here to help you with your problems that result from an automobile accident or an injury on the job or the loss of a loved one. There's no reason you should go through this alone and guess that you're doing things right.
We deal with tragedies that affect families and individuals every day.
Come here and protect your interest. We've been doing this collectively for over 100 years. Let's put that experience to work for you.
All right, we are back as we continue on in our second hour of the show. We're glad you're with us here on Week 7 of Friday Night Drive. Matt Rodewald, Steve Soucie with you as we thank everybody watching us all wherever they are. I especially want to thank anybody on the Dixon bus that is watching us right now, because that's a drive up 57. And, you can just stay with Soucie the entire night here because he'll keep you company on your ride home. It's like, it just be like slow jams with Soucie, they pass when you get past the 10 o'clock hour, they start playing the slow songs on the radio. That's right.
There you go.
It won't make you uncomfortable that much here. One thing I was peeking through the Fox Valley Conference schedule now because of the fact that Cary Grove now has a 2-game lead on everyone here. Everyone finishes up top, Prairie Ridge and Cary Grove with what I would expect some easy wins, some teams under 500. Well, Week 9 battle that you're going to hate, Seuss, Central and Huntley, because that could determine all sorts of things and seeds and everything, because you have 8A and 5A going against each other. That could be a real fun mess for you.
Oh yeah, definitely. And so, look at how I projected it before the game, and that will tell you the outcome because it will go the other way. So there are certain games that, obviously, I look at it, I pick out what I think is the most likely thing to do. I have the most data that I'm ever going to have to make that decision, and sometimes those decisions are not clear. And that one probably will not be as we head into Week 9. I will not be clear on that one. But whatever I do decide heading into Week 9, the opposite will most likely happen.
Somebody asked on the thread, I can't remember the last time Prairie Ridge gave up that many points. And my answer was, I can. I had a front row seat to that on television watching that, the state finals against East St. Louis, and they were all shell-shocked. You just felt bad for them because they were like, we've never had this done to us before. That was that kind of Prairie Ridge feeling that night. So a tough one for sure. So. And appreciate the recap from Bailey that he puts in here in the comments here, just in terms of how the Mantino-Reed Custer game ended here. Talking about Reed Custer had a chance to win it, or at least tie it at the 5-yard line with 30 seconds left. They couldn't do it. So we had a couple of those tonight. Wheaton North and Geneva. Wheaton North had it inside the 25-yard line, chance to go for the win there. A sack and a penalty kind of ended that. But, it's kind of getting to that season where some people are starting to rear up to put themselves in position to give you their best shot. And that's where we get the very strange 3-3 against 6-0. Or next week, we'll see a 4-3 against 7-0. That's going to give them a game that they didn't expect. Is there anything that you're looking at kind of where that kind of fell in line other than the 2 games we just talked about?
Not really, but you definitely start to see those. And you start to see them even on the more extreme level of that. I mean, with Reed Custer, for example, if you would have told me that they were going to have an opportunity to tie that game heading into the fourth quarter, I would have probably laughed at you. No offense to Reed Custer, but they've really struggled against just about everybody. So, I know they have some opportunities here at the back half, but it's an encouraging sign for that program that they've been able to keep their kids up in a positive light with the way that their season has gone to this point. And now maybe they can take the momentum of almost pulling that win off and use it to kind of juice them in those last 2 games of the year and maybe finish strong. So there's always interesting little sidelines that go there. Nobody wants to be in the position where they're playing, basically serving only as a spoiler, but it's always good to see teams that at least embrace that opportunity and say, hey, maybe this isn't going to go the way we want for the entire season.
Yeah,
but we can have a night. Let's go have a night. Let's play 48 minutes and see what happens.
We'll see that in week 9 with somebody, 4-4 trying to get in the postseason, get that 5th win, or even at 3-5 trying to sneak on the 4 line there. And there'll be a 2-6 team that will come up and bite you. And that's where you see it week 9 more often than not, because it's easy to explain, hey, knock them out of the playoffs. It's so much harder in week 7 and week 8 when you know the season's lost and you're just kind of drifting to the wind. So I always applaud those teams. And I pay attention when I go back and look through schedules. If you start 0-6 and you won your last 3 games, you have my attention to start next year every time, just because that's a culture issue. So coaches know that the culture is there, the foundation's there. Can those juniors turn it into a senior magic? And more often than not, when you see it, you're like, okay, well, now I see why that happened. Couple finals just crossed. Willowbrook over Oak Park River Forest, 31-14. How about Fenwick tonight? We wondered if Bennett Academy could hang with Fenwick. The answer is no, 42-7. Final down there in Lisle. And South Elgin, 48 points on Bartlett. Expected that a little bit, but 48-25. Just seeing this score cross, Lions over Downers Grove North, 21-20 tonight.
Wow. Okay. I'd actually kind of lost the thread on that one. I'd almost kind of forgot that it was going on.
Me too.
My goodness, that is a shakeup, no doubt about that. I did not see that coming. I thought Lions was a solid program, and we were talking about that on the Wednesday podcast about how Lions had not really had an opportunity for a plant your flag type of game. They were going to get 2 straight weeks of that. They have York next week. Obviously, they decided that they wanted to preemptively strike that and put that flag down tonight. So a huge win. I mean, that's a Downers Grove North team that I've had ranked in the top 5. So definitely, and just seeing that comment right now, would Lanzu hurt? I don't know how serious it is. This is the first piece of information that I've seen with it at this point.
He was shaken up in the second quarter. He got sacked and it did not return at all in that one. So keep that in mind. Downers Grove North had a 20-7 lead going into the fourth quarter. Lions got a touchdown back on a 15-yard reception. About 9 minutes left in that game. They got a stop. They got the ball back, and then they took the lead on a Piscotti touchdown pass along with 2:37 to go. So somehow they were able to hold them and keep Downers Grove North from getting into field goal range potentially for at least a game winner. Not sure the details on that, but that's gives you a kind of a sense of how that went there. So if Lansu's hurt and don't know how serious that is, and DGN did not have enough depth to hold on to that lead, give Lions all the credit in the world. That's a good football team. But it also shakes up the seed lines again. Downers Grove North expecting to be on the 1 line had they gone through this gauntlet. I don't know if that's the case, but we're seeing those undefeated teams slip away quickly. 8-1 teams might be some of those some higher seeds across some of these brackets pretty thoroughly at this point.
Well, the thing that I'm trying to scan through in my mind right now, and I'm not coming up with the answer, is I don't know if anybody wants to sit on the 1 line in 7A right now.
No.
I think I'm trying to go through my head, and I'm trying to think if there's a team right now that is in 7A that is going to finish 9-0.
Yeah, it'd be Quincy. That might be
maybe
it.
Quincy.
Yeah.
They're a 6A, 7A bubble team. So if they're in the 7A field, I think they're the only option at this point in time. So then all of a sudden you have to start going through your mind, well, okay, who's the 8-1 with a ton of points? That you have to start thinking about that conversation. And I don't know who that is right now, to be honest with you. I'm not looking at my direct sheet right now, so I don't have an answer because I figured that this wasn't going to be something that I'd be thinking about. So all of a sudden the 8-1s are in conversation of, hey, I might be able to get as high as a 1 out of this situation if I have some points sitting in my cachet. So maybe that 1 loss isn't going to hurt me at all. So it's very interesting that's the way that this is developing.
That result might be the best thing to happen to Mount Carmel tonight, other than their win, because at 7-2, and they're going to have a ton of points. They're going to slide pretty far up there and get favorable draws, almost like those 2 losses didn't even happen. That's what I mean. Like this, all of a sudden, it's just everything's washed away here as you're looking at Downers Grove North now 6-1. Quincy, I assume they won tonight. Once we haven't had a final score on that with Sterling. See if we can get that real quick. Didn't see that pop up on my screen just yet, but
they were winning by a whole bunch the last time I saw. That was a long time ago, but they were winning very comfortably.
Cody Cutter was out there, so I'm just going to look at that. Yeah, it was final. 63-6 was the final in that one. Sterling got 2 field goals. That was the only way they were able to get on the board with that. So 7-0 for Quincy after, I believe they were 9-0 last year. Putting some nice seasons together. But, there's going to be a belief, along the Mississippi River that the door is open because they're seeing losses all around the state in their class. And, they know what Mount Carmel can do because they went out there and did it to them last year. But looking at St. Charles North, now it's 6-1. Actually, I didn't get a final. That was in a tight game with Glenbard North. So I want to make sure I double check that one before I go ahead and declare them a winner. That was the only Duquesne North game or Duquesne game that I didn't see. Yes, it was final 34-14. So, you have some teams that are backdooring their way to 8-1 that, might have a nice impressive resume when we get to November.
Yeah. And you look at it right now, and I just took a peek at my sheet because I was interested in what the answer to that. Strangely enough, the answer might actually end up being Lincoln Park. So I think that's
goodness.
One of those things where if that does materialize that way, people are going to be like, how do these seeds work, guys?
Yeah.
Come on. But I mean, it is what it is in that situation. But still, that's not going to change the fact that 8-1 with great points is going to end up on a 2, a 3, a 4 line. And that's something that in the past you didn't really think as a possibility. Like if I got that one loss, I'm probably falling all the way down to maybe 4 if I'm lucky, but 5, 6, 7, somewhere in that neighborhood. There's nobody at the end in the 9-0s. And I'm noticing that tonight. We started the night with 49 of them. We've had some that have lost to non-undefeated teams already. I've noticed a couple of them. It would not surprise me to find us below 40 heading into week 8. So that means we're starting to run out of options. And some of these fields are overloaded with them. Some of them have none. Like that's what's really going to end up happening.
Has it ever been this low, this early?
Yeah, it has.
Okay.
But what usually ends up happening is we have a week of stabilization where everybody wins. And we haven't had one of those yet. We just keep having the fall.
Usually
the fall
6
of the
and 7.
numbers.
And it's week 6 and 7 when everybody just sort of moves the line over.
Right.
And that hasn't happened this year. So,
Yeah.
All right. So let's reset here. And I want to get back to the Catholic League because we haven't talked much about them tonight. Brother Rice was cruising on Niles Notre Dame. So that would put them at 4-3. It's 42-3 with about 2 minutes to go as they're finishing up there. Also want to check in with Michael Dowagic and Mount Carmel's win over Joliet Catholic tonight. That's a lot of state championships between those two. None of those matter tonight. Playoffs did. Let's check in.
Hi guys, Michael here reporting from the south side of Chicago and Mount Carmel, where we had a fun battle between two of the winningest programs in state history, Joliet Catholic and Mount Carmel. Jack Elliott, Vanderbilt commit, returns and leads a big second half comeback for the Caravan, who scored 28 unanswered points before eventually letting up a late touchdown. Mount Carmel wins 35-21 and are back in the winning side, and Jack Elliott seems to be healthy and ready to keep going.
Jack Elliott, very healthy, and you're seeing everybody drift back to them in 7A. Mount Carmel seems to be very dangerous at this point.
Yeah, and it was, I mean, you could kind of see this coming as long as Elliott was fine, because he's the engine in the car right there. There's no doubt about that. Saw them live early in the year, and you could tell that whatever's going to happen is going to happen because Jack Elliott almost wills it to happen. He's that good of a player and that much of a difference maker. So when you're looking at them, you're looking at a situation now, like we've talked about several times this evening. We're not going to have that many 9-0s in that bracket. We're going to have a relatively medium to small handful of 8-1s, and then we start stacking the 7-2s in. Ain't nobody anywhere near Mount Carmel in points in 7A. It's not even close. So, I mean, they're going to end up with probably close to 60 playoff points, which is very, very hard to do if you think about it. Like, if you sit down and think about that, 60 points shouldn't actually be possible. But they're going to get close.
We never
to it.
thought it would be back in the day, and then it's certainly changed for sure.
So they're going to be on top of all the 7-win teams, and if you've got small handfuls, none to 1 to 2 9s, and maybe 5 8-win teams, Mount Carmel's looking at a 6 or a 7 seed with 2 losses. I mean, that's the reality of the situation. And before, you'd be lucky to be a 6-7 seed with one loss.
Yep.
So it's definitely a situation where they're all kind of coming right back to it. But, it's also a situation now that you have to kind of look at who's benefiting from these things too. Because, a Lions where like beforehand, maybe you were saying, well, I don't know if they can beat York. They're probably going to finish 7-2. Well, right now they're making a statement that even if they don't beat York, they're probably an 8-win team. So now not only, you got to move Downers Grove North down, you got to move, the counter move has to be made too. Like someone's coming up too. And it doesn't happen in every situation. Sometimes you've got a team that rises up that already has 2 or 3 losses. But in this case, Lions' counter move has to be accounted for too.
And the world of parallels just makes this really tough to keep track of. That's why we're here to do that for you. You know who benefits from Lions tonight? Wheaton Warrenville South. They got a win and an extra playoff point, and they might need it when it comes down to it here down the stretch because they still have Batavia on the schedule. And I don't know where the wins are going to come from with Wheaton Warrenville South to get into the postseason here. I want to save Hart's recap of Joliet Central to the very end here. We're going to save this till we get off the air. So don't go anywhere with that. I want to check in with Rob in a second. Before I do that, one score that intrigued me too, just along the lines of parallels with playoff points, St. Teresa. They played out of state tonight. They won in overtime, beating Priori out of St. Louis. Who does that help? It helps Altough. It helps Farmington. St. Teresa has started 1-3, and you kind of left them for dead. They're now back to 4-3 here, talking about postseason themselves, but an independent school, that's exactly the kind of team. If you got them in your schedule, you better hope they play some teams they can win because you don't know where the playoff points are going to go. So that's a huge thing for those two schools in particular tonight. Elmwood Brimfield also on their schedule as well. Let's check in from Minooka and Planfield North. Minooka took it on the chin against Yorkville. Did they right the ship? Sure sounds like it. Rob has the recap.
At Planfield North tonight, Minooka was coming off of its first loss of the season, but they showed their resiliency and ended up with a 23-7 win over Planfield North. The Indians jumped out to a 14-0 lead. First quarter, quarterback Zane Caves hit Brady Harold for a 49-yard touchdown, and then in the second quarter, Caves ran in a 4-yard run on his own. North cut it to 14-7 in the third on a 49-yard pass from Justice Bird to Omar Coleman, but Minooka put it away on a 9-yard pass from Caves to Jackson. God, what's his last name? Jackson Miranda, and that ended up, and then later on, Sean Sample added a 23-yard field goal to make the final score. The Minooka defense held Plainfield North to 82 yards passing and 27 yards rushing, 49 yards of which came on the one pass play from Bird to Coleman. So outside of one play, Plainfield North did really not much of anything. Minooka held the ball for most of the game. I didn't keep time of possession, but if they didn't have it for 3/4 of the game, I'd be surprised. Again, 23-7 Minooka. Minooka moves to 6-1. Plainfield North falls to 3-4 with games against Yorkville and Bolingbrook remaining.
You know, there's a story that was brought to my attention within a week or so that when I was doing the state finals games, I gave somebody some advice. Make sure you say as many names as possible because mom and dad are watching. So I know mom and dad are watching these streams. We want to get as many names right as possible. So I love how Rob just kind of stopped. We're going to figure out that name. That was good. So I appreciate Rob doing that for sure. And you know what? Minooka's defense is really good. When that's going to be a good game next week with Minooka and Oswego.
Yeah, I really think there are a lot of teams in the state that you can kind of say, hey, I don't know what I'm going to get from them on a week-to-week basis. I think Minooka is very high on that list. I'm not sure what I'm going to get from them on a week-to-week basis. Kind of had a little bit of a flat tire last week, to be completely honest with you, in that loss to Yorkville. Really didn't see that coming, did not show the signs of what that football team has shown its capability to be. And then this week, it was kind of like, Well, you're running into a Planfield North team that seems to be playing pretty good football. If your offense does not show up, they were going to make you pay. And Minooka's offense showed up a little bit early for them, and then their defense said, "That's going to be enough tonight, boys. We'll carry the rest of the way." So it was a good win for Minooka right now. After some seeds of doubt, to be honest with you, had to be clicking in a little bit because
after that, yeah.
Yeah, it definitely was a very good bounce back win for Minooka. One, when I saw the score early on, I'm like, okay, maybe they're waking up again. But I really don't know what I'm going to get from week to week. Minooka Oswego games tend to be really, really good games. I'm expecting this one to be a good game too, but there's still going to be that question in my mind: which version of Minooka are we going to get?
And the Yorkville Foxes did last week what the Central Rockets did this week. Get a win I didn't see coming, and I don't know what I'm going to get the following week. So that will be interesting going forward here. Before we run out of time, let's get to Joliet Central's recap from Hart Pisani. I want to come back and react to what Hart had to say, and then we're going to hear the interview with the head coach, because that's the first win in how many games?
40
game losing streak gone by the wayside. We want to celebrate that. So let's give them a couple minutes with it here. Hart's recap of Joliet Central's first win in 41 games.
Hart Pisani out here. Final from Plainfield Central. Joliet Central 37, Plainfield Central 17. For the first time in 1,820 days, the Joliet Central Steelmen have won a football game. 1 week shy of the 5-year mark since their last victory. Christian Smith had over 100 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns. The defense forced 3 turnovers, had 2 sacks. It was an all-around team victory, the first victory in the head coaching career of Coach Tom Hart. A lot of teary eyes on the sidelines. Nice to see for the Joliet Central Steelmen. The Wildcats still looking for their first win of the season. That's a wrap for Friday night.
Tears on the sideline. I mean, you put in all of that work and you never win. And you feel awful. I was on those teams. I've been on those teams. Winning, they're supposed to say, act like you've been here before. They haven't been here before. They don't know. Those seniors haven't won a game in high school, let alone this season. That's awesome. I love hearing that stuff.
And prior to going to Joliet Central as a head coach, Thomas Hart worked in other programs that had some success.
Yeah.
And he was trying so hard to try to figure out a way to convey, how we can get there. And it hadn't clicked. You could see progress being made, but it had to have been so hard to say, hey guys, we're progressing, we're getting better, but yet the results on the actual scoreboard were not really reflective of that. But I really have to give Coach Hart credit, even if this had not gone their way tonight, the way that he's continued to stay positive and try to instill belief in those kids that this can happen. We just have to keep grinding at this and doing the right things every day as best we can, and it will happen. And he never wavered from that. Even in the deepest depths of this losing streak, he continued to have that thing. And, I'd see him at events where a lot of the other coaches were around, and he's got this energy about him that people gravitate to. So I can see how the kids would, want to try to achieve success for this. And I mean, he's just a good guy. And I'm just glad that this happened, because I didn't want to have to keep doing what I did every week in a preview saying, getting better. Maybe it's
we
this
get tired of writing that,
Maybe it's this time. And it finally happened. So it shows that with hard effort and putting the right energy and positive vibes out there, that, you can do things, you can accomplish things. And, I'm sure Coach Hart is going to be like, well, guys, let's go get another one, but I hope they take the time to savor this and enjoy it for a good amount of time, because they've been waiting a long time for that in that program.
Let's see if Coach Hart was enjoying it. Here's a recap of a guy who hasn't won in more than 1,000 days. Take it away.
Coach, I did the math. I think it was 1,800 days, 5 years, but the Steelmen have won a football game emotionally for your kids, for the seniors that came before, for yourself. I mean, what's going on right now in your mind?
Right now, it just shows that we've just been building. It's just building. It's building forward. I took these seniors were my first class of freshmen. We've been winning since day one. We've just been chipping away. And yeah, we wanted to quit, especially this season. 2 back-to-back 70-plus point games. But we just kept going and going. I'm so proud of these kids for just putting the pedal to the metal and just nose to the grind. We're just going to go play football and have fun and enjoy each other. And that's what happens in the Jersey.
Obviously, fantastic game for your running back. Fantastic game from Paul, from Pizlewski as well. I mean, it felt like it was a true team effort tonight.
It was. And this, again, our defense stepped up huge. That was finally clicking and going. And then our offense. And again, we've been riddled with injuries, just like these guys have been. We've just been hammered week after week after week. And so, a lot of kids had to step up where they haven't before. Schlick's been bouncing like a ping pong ball from quarterback to linebacker to both, playing with a broken pinky. Smith is always beat up. Our lines just constantly getting pounded. And today we just put that out of our mind. We just went and did our game.
And just lastly, what do you hope to take from this one moving into the future?
I think again we had a lot of our young guys were here, and they came out, especially when they heard the score at halftime. They came out and they got to see really history being made. And my first win and our first win, like you said, in a long time. And hopefully we could just keep that spark and keep going and keep building to a playoff team.
That's awesome. Wonderful. I'd play for him now. I'd run through a wall for him. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you can tell the demeanor is right where it needs to be.
Yeah.
God bless him for doing that. And the other thing, he talked about injuries too. That's the other thing. A lot of these teams, when you're 0-6, 0-7, 1-5, you're dealing with the same injuries too that every other program has too.
Yeah.
Joliet Central is one of those schools. Yeah, they have the enrollment, but they don't always have the training capabilities that the Plainfields, the Bolingbrookes, the Yorkvilles are going to have too. So they're at a disadvantage with some of that stuff. So I give them a ton of credit for digging through and fighting through that stuff.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things. You can see it in his, obviously deservedly and totally understandably pretty emotional about this.
Sure.
When you look at all that the program has gone through, and even before he got there, I mean, I've watched it over the last 6 to 7 years and just been like, gosh, it's just got to be tough to just keep doing this and almost feel like at times you're banging your head up against this wall. But to suffer through all that and then finally get this payoff, I mean, they're, like he said, I mean, for him, these seniors were his first group when they were freshmen. And because of where that program is, some of those freshmen were playing varsity football. That's
scary.
Some of those kids are 4-year players for him. They are guys that have played, literally thousands.
They didn't have a choice.
Snaps at this point because there wasn't anybody else that they could put out there. And those kids got beat up, and those kids kept getting up over and over and over again. And there have been some terrible games this year. There have been some times when I've been critical of their opponents for maybe, going a little too far. You're better than them. You're better than them. That's not necessary. You don't have to do that stuff.
Time to take the foot off the gas, guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, it's basically what, it's just nice to be able to have a moment. Maybe it doesn't materialize in any more wins this year, but those kids are going to have this moment. And that's something that's wonderful.
I know we're late to finish up here. I want to get the highlights to show you. We will show you. It's 2 things that I caught from you to tell you. Our Fenton Bison got win number 5 tonight. So they go from losing streak number 10 to 5 wins and in the postseason. Good for you guys in Bensenville. They got a win tonight at East Aurora, too. So that is a fun bus ride back that they're having tonight. Last thing I'll leave you with this. O'Fallon over Alton tonight. That's key for Downers Grove North.
Yep.
That gives them a playoff point in a battle of offers that we weren't sure who was going to get that point. Someone has to win that game. And you know who else benefits from that? LaSalle Peru has them still in their schedule. So they need all the help they can get. They got a little bit tonight, even though they lost. So that is something to keep in mind as we go forward. Seuss, it's been fun. You stay with everybody here as you go deep into the night and get some scores. Not as deep because, you're celebrating the holiday like everybody else in the north suburbs. And so we'll do that and some highlights as we wrap up another fun week. I'll see you next week, or I'll see you guys Monday as we recap week number 7 here, Friday Night Drive on Shaw Local.
I'm going to stop it too. Fuck that!
Hi guys, interesting interesting week 7. A lot of interesting results. Once again, tonight I don't know how much time we're going to spend because we had so many games on Thursday that a lot of game input has already happened from yesterday. But definitely some we're going to dig into here, try to find the ones that I'm missing, and it should be fun. So let's dive right in with the normal process. I'm putting in some late scores that I saw here, just adding in a few of them before I go start up at the top. But definitely an interesting week 7. I've seen some scores already that I think are going to pretty much affect the way that the bracket projection comes out. So that's going to be real interesting. Okay. So I'm going to start at the top like we always do. I'm missing a couple scores in the Apollo Conference, and I'm going to see if I can dig them out before I start making a list because we've got some stuff going on this week. All right, so let me change my format here. Okay, so let's start in here with the Apollo Conference, like I said. Looking for a couple scores right off the bat. Charleston and Mount Zion is one. Mahomet Seymour and Effingham is the other. So those two I do not have. So need both of those. The one I did get was Taylorville beating Mattoon tonight, so that's in the bank. And I know the answer to, I mean, I know who won the game. We were in broadcast, so I didn't document it. I'm aware that, let's see. There, I just found it. Okay, so I've got all the big Northern scores, I think. I'm going to go down. I didn't put the Johnston City score in, but I'll put that in there right now. So then we're looking at the Big Northern's all done. Now we're going to the Big 12. I believe I'm missing a couple of those. Montini's doing okay. They picked up a big win tonight. I believe it was 34-14. I think, if my memory serves correct, that moves them to 5-2 on the year. So, yeah, they won 31-14 over St. Viator tonight. So that moved them to 5-2. So now I'm moving on to the Big 12. And let's see what we got here. Okay, so I think I'm going to need a couple here too. Okay, I got a few of these. So I'm going to put these in. Bloomington over Peoria, Notre Dame, 34-7. Okay, Richwoods and Urbana. Let's see what I got there. 46-6. Okay. Normal West. Okay, don't have Normal West and Manual. So Normal West and Peoria Manual. I need that one. And that appears to be the only one that I need out of the Big 12. So 3 scores so far. Muhammad 49-0. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. 2 scores now then. Charleston, Mount Zion, Normal West, and Peoria Manual are my needs. Okay. So, moving on to the Black Diamond. Assessor wins 40-14. I had that one already. White County and Edwards County. All right. Normal West 49-6. Thank you. Thanks, Weather. Okay, so now the only rogue score is Charleston and Mount Zion so far. So let's hit. I'm going to hit one more thing here. Oops. Okay. Black Diamond. Let's take a check here to make sure I don't have them sitting somewhere else. Fairfield 68-7. Christopher. White County, Edwards County. Okay, so I'm missing White County and Edwards County out of the Black Diamond. Do not have that one anywhere. So now we're back up to 2. 2 scores, Charleston, Mount Zion, White County, Edwards County from the Black Diamond. So now, moving into the Cahokia. I got a fair amount of these earlier. So in some cases, I'm just missing one. Chester 48-14 over Dupo. So that I think that nope, that doesn't knock out that conference. Thanks, Weather. 48-6. Okay. So heading to the Cahokia, Illinois. And I'm missing Sparta and Carlisle. Okay, so Columbia over Salem. I needed that one. Okay, let's check out some CCL scores here that I were missing. I got most of them, but okay, so Marist 37-19 over St. Ignatius. And let's see, what was the St. Francis final? 38-27. So with the Saturday games, I think that puts me all the way through the Catholic League. Except I did not see St. Lawrence and St. Patrick, and there's the answer. 24-13. So we're through the Catholic League. Now we're moving to Central State 8. Carlisle, you got me that Carlisle score. Thank you. Put that one in before I forget to do it, because I will. Okay. So moving along pretty good here. Central State 8 East. I never did see a Rochester final. I think I'll be able to find that pretty easily, though. Or I lied. Maybe I won't. So the last score I had on Rochester was 39-0, but I do not know if that was the final. So I'm adding Rochester and Decatur MacArthur to the list. And moving on to the Central up. Thank you. 46-0. Okay, I'll take it. 46-0. Okay, Central State 8 West. Sacred Heart wins 35-7 tonight over Springfield. Quincy Notre Dame over Jacksonville. I'm telling you, that Quincy Notre Dame team is really good. I think they're going to be extremely dangerous in the 2A playoffs. Another nice win for them tonight. 6-1, only lost to Quincy. That's a really good team. Okay, so now we're going to speed through a lot here because of the Thursday games. So those are I'm going to bounce all the way down here through several games. Okay, so now I'm into the Chicago Public League. These are always the trickiest ones to find because sometimes they move game times, and there's one that I found right now. That game is tomorrow, not tonight. So Lane and Taft is not going to come in tonight because they didn't play tonight. So now I'm moving through. Okay. So now I'm looking for South Shore and Catalyst Maria. I know it's a long shot I'll be able to get help on that one, but I'm going to try. So South Shore and Catalyst Maria added to the list. Right now that has 2 games on it, that game and Charleston and Mount Zion. So fortunately, I think that's the only public league score that I'm looking for. And now I'm going to go to the Duquesne. I think I'm only missing 1 game there. And I just found that one. So Glenbard North, St. Charles North. Glenbard North loses 34-14. So after we move through the Fox Valley, I got one score that I'm missing there. See if I can find that one real quick. Dundee Crown over Hampshire. So that one's in as well. Okay. So now we're moving to the heart of Central Illinois. I did need a Charleston Mount Zion score. So beats Deer Creek Mackinac 19-14. Okay, right now I'm looking for a final on Tri-Valley and Ridgeview. I have a fourth quarter score, but not a final. I don't know off the top of my head, Grant. I can't remember. Next week's Dixon game is at Dixon. I just looked it up. 42-12, Tri-Valley. Thank you. So right now the missing score is Charleston, Mount Zion, and South Shore and Catalyst Maria. Thank you, Aiden. Appreciate it. Okay, so now I'm going to go back and put in that Tri-Valley score. 41-12. Okay, so now we're in the heart of Illinois, Central Illinois Small, and about, believe it or not, 60% done on the scores for this week already. So Tuscola over Hayworth, 25-20. It's closer than I thought. All right, I need a Gibson City, Melvin Sibley, and Fieldcrest score. And I need a Macon Meridian Lewistown score. And that is it from that conference. GCMS 43-12, thank you. Okay. So now we're moving on to the Illini Prairie. Loner Unity 51-12. Monticello 33-0. St. Joe Ogden 59-8. IVC loses to Bloomington Central Catholic 49-28. Okay, so we're all through that. Got to check the missing score in the Illinois Central 8. Piatone 52-14 over Streeter. Okay, for reminder's sake, we're missing currently 2 scores. South Shore, Catalyst Maria, and Macon Meridian and Lewistown. Those are the 2 that I'm missing. And now we're going to the independents. I know a few of these, but I don't know them all. Okay, so Collinsville over Marion, 48-38. St. Teresa won in overtime. I do know that, 27-21. Althoff all over Mater Dei tonight. Okay, so I think I'm looking for a Mount Vernon Granite City score, but I'm going to check one place before I give up on that. I am. I'm looking for Mount Vernon and Granite City. And get creative here to while I look for one of these out-of-state scores. These are always tricky. Thank you. Sorry about that, guys. That would not shut up. Macon Meridian and Lewistown. Thank you for that score. I'm sure that was not easy to find. Okay. 61-22. Lewistown. 261. Okay. So, 3 scores right now: South Shore, Catalyst Maria, Mount Vernon, Granite City, and Alton Marquette and Perryville, Missouri. So they make that 2 scores. Thank you, Aiden. Okay, so put that in the proper place. All right, that's Saturday, that's Saturday, that's Saturday. So then we're into the Interstate 8 now. Morris wins 59-0. Thought that's what it was, but I couldn't remember for sure. 59-0. Okay, so now I'm moving back over here. Kishwaukee River. Johnsburg, 28-0 over Plano. It is Alton Marquette and Perryville, Missouri. So, Marengo over Harvard, 33-29. Sandwich and Woodstock. I don't think that score is right. Thank you. Really digging tonight, Weather. Go find me that public league score. But thank you, seriously. Appreciate it. Saves me a ton of time on the back end. I appreciate that very much. Okay, Richmond Burton 35-0 over Woodstock North. Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. The publicly recorded score in several places has Woodstock beating Sandwich tonight, and that's not what happened. So, it's right on that instinct. Sandwich 28, Woodstock 14. Several publications have it listed in the opposite perspective, but I knew I saw on Twitter earlier that Sandwich was winning one of that game with reporters. So, okay. So, let's move on to the Lincoln Prairie after we got all that ironed out. Okay, Sullivan over Nokomis. So Sullivan goes to 7-0. Okay, so checking a couple places now, trying to get some Lincoln Prairie scores. Okay, so I need an Argenta Oriana score, Villa Grove. Okay, so $62.7 for Arthur over Cerro Gordo. $42.8 Cumberland over Tri-County. You're a crazy man, Weather. I feel like we're almost related in some ways. Sounds like exactly something that I would do. So, Argenta and Villa Grove, South Shore, Catalyst, Maria are the two scores that I'm missing right now. As I move into the Lincoln Prairie, the large division, the Lincoln Trail Prairie Land large division. Illini West over Bureau Valley. Okay, that confirms a toss-up game that I was having trouble with. I was right on that one. Not much defense apparently played in the Knoxville West Hancock game tonight. 80-52 is the score that I'm seeing. Okay, Elmwood and Macomb. Well, nice win for Elmwood tonight over Macomb, 31-28. Okay. So those scores are all done from that conference. Now we're going to the small side division. Abingdon 36-34 over Havana. Princeville 33-22 over Stark County. Rushville 42-34. A lot of high scores tonight. South Fulton 34-7. Okay. So that conference is done. And now we're moving on to the Little Alina. Okay, Robinson over Newton, 35-28. Marshall over Lawrenceville, 33-10. And East Richland, 64-36. 7-0 East Richland. Okay, on to the Middle Alina. So right now, my two missing scores, Catalyst Maria and South Shore, and Argenta and Villa Grove. Okay. And Morton and East Peoria, 64-7. So, okay, so thank you for that one, Weather. 28-21. So I'm going to put that one in. Okay, so now we move all the way down to the Mississippi Valley with all the Thursday finals that we already have in. Mascoutah 42-35. Highland beats Triad. Oh, man, that's a nice win for them. Waterloo 41-0 over Civic Memorial. Okay. So we quickly are moving down here to the NIC 10. Ononego over Boylan. It's possible. I could see that. Okay, so I am missing a lot out of the Northern Illinois 10 right now. I'm going to check one more place to see if I can get at least a little bit more dent going. The Belvedere North, 42-16. Guilford 36-0 over Freeport. That could hurt Freeport. I thought they were in good shape, but okay. So I'm missing Belvedere and Rockford Jefferson right now. There we go. I just saw you, Weather. Thank you. Okay. Northwest Upstate Illini. Dupac over Fulton. 60-36. Stockton all over Morrison tonight. 54-14. Galena over Dakota, as expected. 43-6. Winslow, 35-18. 18-35. Okay, on to the Sangamo. Maroa over Olympia, 61-33. Yeah, I would agree. The NUIC is a little weird, especially in the middle. It's been kind of tough to figure out. Pittsfield, 41-14. 14-41. Athens versus DePorta. Williamsville, so that's done. So now we're going to Southern Illinois River, Mississippi. Okay, so I'm going to need a little help here, I think. Had a little trouble there. I think we're at less than 50 games already, which is kind of incredible. But yeah, that was a game, Weather, that I was kind of torn on all week long. I was interested to see who would win that game, and I'm not surprised to see it win in overtime because evaluating those two teams on paper, they looked extremely close. I think that's probably going to get Stillman in and keep Genoa out in the long run. Okay, so I'm missing Nashville and Pinckneyville. Okay. So Southern Illinois River, Ohio Division. Murfreesboro 47-13 over Harrisburg. Carterville 50-18 over Massac. And Heron plays tomorrow, so we got all of those. On to the South Central Conference. Nashville 49-14, thank you. Okay, so let's check in on this one. North Mac over Southwestern, 35-33. Vandalia 47-20 over Hillsboro. Staunton over Litchfield, 14-13. Greenville over Carlinville, 28-0. And then I'm going to check one more place, but I am missing one score in this conference. And now I'm not, because I just found it. 1354. Okay, on to the South 7. Carbondale wins this one 53-8. Collins Marion gets beat 38-48. Cahokia beats Centralia 28-17. And then, courtesy of the scores from earlier, Mount Vernon wins 42-18. Okay, on to the South Suburban Blue. I already had the Hillcrest score in, and I know that Lamont lost that game to Richards, 21-10. And let's go back up again. Eisenhower over Argo. So that's interesting because that's going to bump Argo off of the field. So that's a team that I've noticed that I no longer will have in the projection that I had before. So it's potentially opening up another spot for a 4 and 5 team. So right now, I think I'm looking for Bremen and Tinley Park. Yes, I am looking for Tinley Park and Bremen. Okay. Tinley Park a winner in that one. Okay. So now we're on to the Southland Conference. Thornridge loses 55-7. I had the other scores in, and there's a Saturday. So now we're going to the Southwest Valley. Naperville North, 42-0 over Neuqua. And I know that Bradley won that game, but I can't remember the score. Bradley wins over Homewood Flossmoor, 24-21. Waubonsee Valley over DeKalb, 28-19. Lincoln Way Central, 49-0 over Stagg. And that gets all those. And actually, no, it doesn't. Oh, wow. Andrew with a 42-27 win over Sandburg tonight. That is a big win for the T-Bolts. Okay. I had both those teams in the field, but that's going to change some seeds around quite a bit. Andrew's going to move up. Sandburg's going to move down. So that's an interesting one from tonight. I had not seen that one previously. So O'Fallon over Belleville West, 18-15. Okay, Edwardsville over Belleville East, 20-10. And East St. Louis wins 57-0. So that's done. Now we're moving to the Southwest Prairie. Plainfield South shuts out Plainfield East 28-0. Joliet Central with the win. Go Steelman. Okay, Minooka and Planfield North, that was 23-7. Okay. So the Southwest Prairie is done. Now we're on to the Three Rivers. Princeton over Mendota, 57-14. Monmouth, 35-14 over Spring Valley Hall. And then change conferences. $35-7. Central Catholic. Erie wins 32-28. Rock Ridge 34-6. So now we're going to move on to the Upstate 8. Unbarred East 49-15 over West Chicago. Unbarred South, 24-21 over Ridgewood. Riverside Brookfield, 56-21 over Elmwood Park. And then I know Fenton was a non-con tonight, so they won 56-20. And let's go back up here. South Elgin, 48-25 over Bartlett. Okay, Elgin and Streamwood. 13-0 Streamwood over Elgin. Okay. So now we're moving to the Vermilion Valley. Almost home, guys. Very few left on the board right now. I believe we're in the last 6 conferences. Central over Hoopston, 55-22. Bismarck Henning, 42-14 over Moments. It's kind of a blowout out of 2 state-ranked teams in 2A there. Westville beats Watseka, 42-14. Okay, so I think I'm looking for Iroquois West and Oakwood from the Vermilion Valley. Yes, I'm looking for Oakwood and Iroquois West. Five more conferences to go. Willowbrook wins 31-14. That's the crossover. Thank you, Weather. Oakwood 44-6. Iroquois West 6-44. Under 20 games right now that need to be put in. So shouldn't be long. 35-12. Hinsdale South 53-7. Lions with that crazy win over Downers Grove North. Looking forward to reading more about that. Hinsdale Central 64-0 tonight. And then the other game is on Saturday. So now, moving into the Western Big Six. 2 more conferences to go, the Western Big Six and the Western Illinois Valley. So Rock Island over Galesburg. Let's see, it's 55-7. Okay, so right now I'm not showing 2 scores from the Western Big Six. I know that Quincy beat Sterling badly, but I don't remember what the final was. And Moline beat East Moline 28-14. $63-6. Thank you. Okay. So those are all done. 6 more games. Actually, 5 more games. That's all we need. Okay. So all right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out the middleman right here. Check those scores. Okay, so I need Camp Point Central and Triopia. I lied. I do not need that one. Brown County, 60-39 over Route, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but okay. Last division of the night. I have all the scores. So 32-0. Calhoun over Pleasant Hill. West Central 60-8 over North Green. And Greenfield over Carrollton 42-26. Okay, so believe it or not, I've been doing this for 25 years, and I can't ever remember a time where I had all the Friday scores in, minus that rogue Chicago Public League score that may or may not have been played tonight, before midnight. So that's pretty incredible. I'm going to do a little bit of looking around here just to make sure that I didn't key anything in wrong. But just for frame of reference, let's take a look real quick. Okay, we've got 35 teams at 7-0, and there are just 4 teams playing tomorrow that are 6-0. One of the 6-0s is the South Shore Catalyst Maria game. So the maximum number of teams that we could end up at undefeated after Week 7's completion of games is 39. So that number is extraordinarily low. So that's one interesting thing that's been earthed from tonight's games. Several 6-0 teams lost to teams that were not in the they were not playing a team that was also 6-0 tonight. So that was an interesting fact that came out of it. Always like to look at where we're at on strength of schedule. A couple of 0-7 teams lead the pack right now with 44 accumulated playoff points. Alton and Conant, 1 point behind them is Mount Carmel at 43. Surprisingly, a Chicago Public League school, Chicago Clark, is at 42. And if they can run the table and get to 5-4, including a win tomorrow, or excuse me, they would be a team that could potentially make the playoffs at 4-5. Highland, Wheaton Warrenville, South St. Charles East, Rock Island, Granite City, Elmwood Park are at 41. So that's the interesting thing from tonight. One other thing that I can look at real quick and get an answer to, we've got 95 teams that have 6 wins, which basically means that they are getting into the playoffs regardless of what happens in the remaining 3 weeks of the season. And then we have, let's check and see, another, on top of that, we have a whole swath of 5-win teams, almost 100 of them. So, actually, that's not true. Correction. 69 to... There are 73 of those. So there are 168 teams right now that have at least 5 victories. So that tells you where we're at in regards to that. And then you go down even farther. We now have 255 teams that have at least 4 wins, which I find pretty interesting, to be completely honest with you. So when it breaks down into that situation, that's where we're at. So beyond that, I think I'm going to wrap it up for tonight. And thanks a lot for your help, guys. I really appreciate it. Shocking that we have all these finals in so early. So thanks a lot for your assistance. We'll see you next week. Next week is when I'll really start to get into the guts of like what I'm seeing and how it affects playoff fields. I'm going to start to have some tentative spreadsheets that I can show you guys that shows, hey, this is what happens with a win. This is what happens with a loss. We can look at some seed sheets. I'll run late into the night next week, and then week 9, obviously, I might as well forget about sleeping. But appreciate your help. Appreciate you guys hanging out. It's definitely a big help with you guys chipping in those scores that you can find. I know everybody's got different sources for where they find these things, and I always appreciate the assistance. So everybody have a great night. We'll see you in week 8. Thanks a lot. Bye.